And we are back. Welcome to the 2016 Trophy Husbands Dynasty League Football Draft Special, and we are live. This is my co-host, Andrew Walsh.
How's everyone doing this afternoon? It's good to be here, good to be back for another season. And this, in case he is not well known enough already, is the man in charge, the main commissioner, Mr. Curtis Patrick.
Well, thanks, Andrew. I'm excited about this draft special today. But we need to review a little bit of league business before we get to the event of the hour. I'm sad to report that Ben Cook, one of our inaugural owners, has been relegated to NFL Jordan and is no longer able to play with us.
Yes, as a league full of extremists, we, as a business decision, decided to send Ben as an ambassador to, try to bring the NFL Dynasty fantasy experience to the Arabian nations. So Ben will be our new delegate in that area, and we will be replacing him this year with a new manager.
Thanks for that review, Andrew. Let's eulogize Ben just a little bit. He was a pretty good owner compared to some of you. In 2013, Ben was actually our runner-up, and that was our inaugural season. Tough team. I did take him down in the title. Sorry about that, cuz. In 2014, Ben backslid drastically into 8th place, and then he recovered a little bit last year, just narrowly missing the playoffs and 5th place finish. So Ben definitely leaves a legacy with the league. You've got a spot here when you return from Jordan, buddy. Moving on to new ownership, we've extended the invite to Dan Matheny, and Dan was unable to appear live for the special, Andrew, because I'm told he had a previously scheduled masseuse appointment.
Yes, we spoke with him over the phone, and we were not able to determine whether that massage ended happily or not, but we were able to gain some insight into Dan as a future manager of this league.
It's a real power move, if you ask me.
Good point. Keeps the leverage on his side.
So we asked Dan via phone interview just a few questions, and we said, Dan, what are 3 things that you really want the guys in this league that are going to be your opposition to know about you? And the first thing he said is, I want the guys to know I have regular access to 4 holes.
Yes, and we know Dan is an avid golfer, but we're not quite sure if he was referring to his private golf course or maybe some other personal access.
Dan has had a chance to review the roster he's inheriting, and he said that the player he's most excited about owning is Julio Jones. Now, Julio, for those of you that have been following the contracts, is due a 30% raise this year. So Dan did say he would be entering contract negotiations immediately.
Yes, those of you that know Dan know that he is quite the spender, but he did not offer any further comment as he's in communications with Julio's agent discussing the monetary aspects of the deal right now.
Yeah. The third and final thing he wanted everyone to know is that he's never actually participated in an auction draft. Now, before you start salivating, I want to caution you, because I've been to the casino with Danny, and the dollar bills start to fly just real quick. So I don't think he's going to be shy about getting the bids out there early and often. And he's not an owner I would sleep on.
Right, he does like to make it rain, so let's be aware of his actions in this upcoming auction.
So welcome to the league, Danny. We will definitely think of a great punishment for you. Hold on. Okay, thanks, Barbara. I've just been informed that the Brinks security truck has arrived with the delivery of the lottery balls.
Yes, due to some concerns that have been brought up by league managers about the integrity of the league and the policies and procedures carried on by ourselves as commissioners, we've kind of upped the ante a little bit this year and decided to be completely transparent and make sure that everyone was not questioning anything that we were doing. So we have hired an armed officer to oversee and supervise and deliver the lottery balls for this year's rookie draft drawing.
Yeah, you guys really hit me in the wallet on this one. I had to spare no expense. So, Officer Smallerwood, if you could please bring the balls to the table. Now, sir, before you leave the silver bowl with us, can you confirm the correct number of balls and assignment to said balls?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Get back to your other career. Those look like they Velcro on. Okay, so we got the balls. We'll get to the lottery here shortly.
I can't wait to get my hands on those balls.
I know you can.
It's my favorite part of every year.
We wanted to do a little segment we call Fun Facts about DFL.
Something new for this year. We thought might be a little interesting, a little entertaining for those of you that can't quite compete during the season. We thought we'd bring you a little entertainment in another avenue.
So just a little bit of history. We've had 3 champions. I actually won the championship in 2013, and Andrew has won it the last 2 years. So before you cry collusion, maybe you should just improve your own draft habits, lest you continue to lose to the commissioners. So Andrew will actually be chasing our first true Dynasty status this year as he looks to three-peat. So hopefully the other 8 of you will join me in keeping him from achieving that. Another fun fact about our worst franchises through the first 3 years. Now, Andrew, who would you guess would be the worst franchise through the first 3 years?
You know, when I think about the past 3 years, it really comes down to 2 managers, and it'd be hard to pinpoint between the 2. I would have to say it would be either be Jake or Tom. One of those 2 has got to be statistically the worst manager we've had the last 3 years.
Now, you are spot on. Jake and Tom actually share an equally bad record of 16 and 26. Neither owner has made the playoffs in the first 3 seasons. And we actually had to go to a tiebreaker to determine who the worst franchise is through the first 3 seasons. And Tom Duncan is the proud owner of that toilet bowl designation, having the worst record and the lowest point total through the first 3 seasons.
Tom, we love your trivia every year during the draft and appreciate you doing that. As competitors, we would love you to continue putting forth the time needed to provide those entertaining questions instead of maybe doing a little bit more research for your team on the draft. But, you know, maybe step it up a little bit so you don't keep coming in last place. That'd be great.
Yeah. In our best franchise through the first 3 years, it's actually me. I'm a stellar 34 and 8 through 3 years, but only 1 title to show for it. So it just goes to show you that, you know, getting in the playoffs is no guarantee of bringing home the Champions Cup.
Curtis has a tendency for getting in there, but just not finishing the job. And I am the finisher. So even though statistically through the regular season, he may have me beat, I've got the 2 titles to show for it. So just shows you that I can really close that deal.
Now, before we review last year's final standings and get to the draft lottery, Andrew and I just wanted to do a quick overview of the league. This is mostly for Dan Matheny's benefit, but I think, you know, since the 7
probably about maybe 3 to 4 other managers that don't really pay much attention throughout the course of the season as well.
Valid point, sir. So this is just our opinion of who some of the blue chip players are on each roster in the league. So we'll start with Andrew's team. And my pick for his blue chip player is Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah, we were looking at the rosters, and there were a few to choose from. But when you consider the transition this year to a full point PPR, as well as the cheap price as a keeper player for Alshon Jeffrey, that was the one that we thought best as the blue chip player for my team.
For Darren, Antonio Brown, AB 84. He's averaging 125 receptions a year over the last 3 years. I know Darren is just licking his chops about managing that player this season.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it would be like to count on those points every single week, week in and week out.
For me, it's Nuke the Bomb, baby. DeAndre Hopkins. He's going to be holding down the fort on my Dynasty roster for seasons to come. It was a tough choice. I've got a stable of young stud wide receivers, but Nuke the Bomb, you my man.
Yeah, unfortunately I gave DeAndre Hopkins to Curtis last year in exchange for some other players, Todd Gurley to be one that ended up coming into my possession, but seeing that we're at PPR this year, DeAndre Hopkins looking pretty tasty.
And you would know something about tasty.
I mean, I dabble in the arts of culinary.
So Brent's blue chip player, our selection was Lamar Miller. And Lamar Miller, of course, changing teams from the Dolphins to the Houston Texans this season. Should be a workhorse back. I think he's a guy that projects to catch 40 or 50 balls in addition to the rushing projection. So, Brent, I think he's got a stallion there.
Yeah, I think Lamar can be a complete back. Maybe fill the shadow of Arian Foster from a few previous years ago and become a franchise player in that way.
Dan Yost, actually, his blue chip player was really an afterthought going into last season. David Johnson, and of course he came on strong at the end of the year and won a lot of people fantasy titles last season. Unfortunately, Dan was not even in the playoffs, so he did not have that problem.
Yeah, and I would also add that Dan has David Johnson to none of his own credit. Had no idea that he would be a great player and traded a few second-round draft picks for him just as a flyer, and as the fortunes would have it, ended up being a pretty solid pickup for him. So, way to be lucky, Dan. Good job.
Even a blind squirrel finds a few nuts every now and then, Andrew.
That is true. Thanks for pointing that out. It's good for Dan to find some nuts.
So Brian, the famed Officer Smallerwood that was here earlier, his blue chip player is Amari Cooper. Now, Amari Cooper had a stellar rookie season, one of the best rookie seasons for a wide receiver in NFL history. He's got to be excited about Amari this season.
Yeah, another year under his belt, another year to mature. Again, transitioning to a PPR should be a great cornerstone for his team for years to come.
Derek Morey, he of the atrocious trade offer. We couldn't even pick a blue chip player for Derek because he really has two of them, and we've got to give him the credit.
Yep.
He's got Le'Veon Bell coming back from injury this season, and he's got Odell Beckham Jr. I do not want to be playing Derek this season.
I mean, you think about PPR, you think about the guaranteed workload. Both players are going to be racking in points for him all year long.
For Tom Duncan, we had to really squint to find that blue chip player, but we're going to go out on a limb and say it's Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, I think that's probably a safe bet for Tom. As a wide receiver one in New Orleans, you expect him to see lots of targets, lots of looks, and probably continue to produce there. So hopefully he can, do some good work for Tom this year.
I think my main concern is, will Breeze feed the balls just to Brandon Cooks, or is he going to spread those balls around?
You never know with Drew Brees. He likes to share his balls with everyone.
That's a good point. Don't get too excited about Brandon Cooks just yet, Tom. So Dan Matheny, our new owner, inheriting a mediocre roster in comparison to the rest of the league, but we chose Devontae Freeman as his blue chip player. I know that we already talked about the fact that he has Julio Jones, but Devontae Freeman is an extreme value given his salary, and he was one of the league leaders from a running back perspective in catches last year.
Yes, should be another workhorse back that not only runs but receives the ball from the backfield, and kind of fell into his lap. Pretty nice. Probably be a top 10 back this year, and for a great price, great value.
And finally, we get to Jake, and we'll talk a little bit more about Jake later. He's another roster we kind of had to squint to find that blue chipper, and we actually had to choose a quarterback. And for any of you that know anything about Dynasty football, if your quarterback is your blue chip player, you got some work to do. But that being said, Cam Newton holding down the fort for Jake.
Yeah, I would say he put up some record-setting numbers last year, and at the price that Cam Newton is at going into this season, made the selection pretty obvious from Jake's roster. So best of luck with Cam, Jake.
Okay, well, drum roll. Let's get into the draft lottery. Now, Andrew, could you please review the final standings from last season?
Okay, so just to clarify, the way that we have done this throughout the course of this entire season is the first four teams in place of finish, the four teams that make the playoffs, are automatically placed in inverse order, first place getting the 10th pick, and so on, for picks 7 through 10. For the lottery teams, which are all the teams that do not make the playoffs, they will have an appropriate number of balls placed into the bowl and selected to determine their place in the rookie draft order. So, in order from first place to last place from our 2015 season, first place, myself, took home the championship. Second place, runner-up was Darren. Third place, Curtis, 4th place Brent, and those were our 4 playoff teams. All having their picks being put into the draft lottery. Some appropriate number of balls for them would be 5th place Dan, 6th Dan Yost, that is. Now that we have 2 Dans in the league. 6th place Brian, aka Officer Smallwood. 7th place, which would be Ben Cook's old team, now inherited by Dan Matheny. 8th place Tom. 9th place Derek. And 10th place, last place, coming up in the end, Jake.
Now, before we get too attached to those final standings, we got to remind you, those picks changed hands many times last season. So while those were the final standings and the corresponding picks assigned to each spot, it doesn't mean that's where each of you is actually drafting. So when the dust settles, and we reviewed all the transactions from last season and made sure that this was correct, the 6 owners who are participating in the lottery today are Jake, Tom, Jake again, Derek, Brian, and Dan Yost.
And we do want to kind of say thank you to Tom for helping us track all of the trades involving draft picks throughout the season. He was a big help for us as commissioners to be able to kind of monitor that and keep us informed and have record of that when it comes time to figure this stuff out. So much appreciated.
So if you weren't able to already get there on your own, the picks that are not part of the lottery today are the 7th pick is actually owned by Andrew after the trades. The 8th pick is also owned by Jake. Now that's great because we said his team was awful. He has 3 first-round picks, so good for you, Jake. At least you have a path to rebuild. The 9th pick is owned by Dan Yost, and the 10th pick is owned by Brian Smallerwood. So is there anything else we need to know about the lottery before we start drawing?
I would just quickly review with the picks that are in the lottery. The first pick, which is now owned by Jake, has 6 balls in the lottery. The second name, which would be second to last pick, which is now owned by Tom, is going to have 5 balls in the lottery.
And so on and so forth.
Right, all the way down through, with Dan Yost having 1 ball in the lottery, 1 chance to have the first pick in the rookie draft.
Yeah, thanks for that review. And I also want to take this second to remind the league that Jake is going to be faced with an ultimatum, and it's going to be really fun. He may not have all 3 of those first-round picks, so we'll talk about that after we're done with the lottery selection. Andrew, I know you have been just itching to get your hands on these balls.
It's always one of my favorite times of the season, is to be able to pick the balls, hold them in my hands, make that selection, and reveal those balls in my hands to the world.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stir the balls, and I'll hand them over.
Right.
Now, the first ball selected will be the first pick.
Without looking in the bowl, I like to toss the balls a little before I make my selection. The first pick in the 2016 Trophy Husbands Dynasty Football League rookie draft goes to the manager.
What's the number there?
Owning number 4.
Derek Morey, first pick, adding to his Odell Beckham and Le'Veon Bell team. That is going to be tough. Congrats, Derek. I hate you. Next pick.
From here on out, any balls with the number 4 will be placed to the side. The next pick goes to the manager, placed in slot number 3.
Jake Overholt will have the second pick. Maybe. Next pick.
The third pick goes to the manager in slot number 1.
Jake picks 2 and 3. Next.
The fourth pick will go to the manager in slot number 2.
Tom Duncan. Congrats, Tom. Before we do these final 2 lottery ball selections, I want to take a brief pause to thank one of our sponsors, Simply Lemonade. That's what Andrew and I are both drinking today. Lemonade, the drink of champions. And we're back. Thanks for your patience with that brief technical difficulty. We're going to resume our draft with the selection of the 5th pick.
Okay, so the manager with the 5th pick in this year's rookie draft will be the manager in slot number 5.
That's Brian Smallerwood. Congratulations, Brian. That means by default, Dan Yost will have the 6th pick. We will be sure to push the results of the draft lottery on the league page. All 10 slots are locked in, and that also determines the 2nd round draft picks, so we'll make sure that those are available for you. Now, on to some final business. Jake Overholt was last year's last place finisher.
Correct. And due to a new wrinkle that we've added into the league, last place will be potentially subject, pending their decision, to punishment decided on by the league.
And the punishment for this year is quite juicy. Jake is going to have to determine whether he wants to forfeit his highest first round draft pick, which as a result of the lottery is the 2nd overall pick. If he wants to forfeit that pick, he can forego punishment. Alternatively, he can accept his punishment and keep that 2nd pick. And we've really developed something that we think Jake is going to love. And Andrew's going to bring this up into the camera for review by the rest of the league. But what we decided this year is we really want to publicly humiliate Jake. We just know that he's a good sport, he's well known in the community, and we just think it's a good opportunity to let the world know how bad Jake is at fantasy football. So we've mocked up a 20 by 12 automobile magnet that looks a little bit like this. And it's got Jake's picture there 4 times from when he was growing out his really bad mustache. And I believe it says something to the effect of fantasy football punishment. My name is Jake Overholt, and I suck. Andrew, can you clarify? I can't see it.
Yeah, the video right now is a little bit focused in on our seats, so it's a little blurry, but you can see, if you look closely, where it clearly states that Jake sucks at fantasy football, and it also has a rather attractive picture on the 4 corners of the potential car magnet.
Okay, so Jake, you've got 24 hours to decide. Now, before you think you're off easy, that magnet has to be displayed in clear view on your black truck, of which we will forward a picture to every owner in the league. If you are spotted driving around without the magnet in clear view on your truck between now and the Super Bowl, you'll have to put in $10 to this year's champions pot each time you are found to not be displaying the magnet. That could get quite pricey.
Yes, and we had discussed a 3rd alternative.
Now that's not going to be open to Jake this year, but we did want to clarify, if Jake did not have a 1st round pick to forfeit, the alternative was going to be that he could buy off the rest of the owners by paying everyone's league fees for this year. Lucky for Jake, he doesn't have to resort to that option because he had 3 1st round draft picks. But keep that in mind for next year. If you don't want to follow through with fulfilling your punishment and you don't have a 1st round draft pick, it's going to cost you.
Word to the wise, don't suck at fantasy football, especially in our league.
And don't trade your 1st round draft picks.
True.
Okay, well, that's all. Stay tuned for updates about our draft night, keeper selections, trade windows. All that's going to be readily available for you on the draft board. You've all received your email invites, so make sure you're checking those inboxes, accepting them, and transitioning into yet another Dynasty Football League season.
Yes, again, it's been a pleasure handling all of your balls this season. We look forward to another great year, and it's been a pleasure, Commissioner.
Thanks, Co-Commish. Appreciate that. Till next time.